Good morning, students. Welcome to class 6. Today we are going to start with a grammar topic called degrees of comparison. Now, before I start the topic, you need to understand which part of speech is it related to. Is it related to noun, pronoun, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, or conjunctions? Now, degrees of comparison is related to adjectives since it talks about how when a comparison is made, we refer to different degrees of comparison while talking about adjectives. Now, degrees of comparison, as you can see onto the first slide, are used when we describe a person or a thing. As you must have done in the earlier classes, that when we are describing a person or a thing, it refers to the describing words. Now, which ones are the describing words? Yes, you have guessed it right. They are adjectives. Now, here we are talking about adjectives, but what happens when we make the comparison with regard to adjectives? Let's move on to the next slide. Now, since we have now recognized that they are adjectives, know how many degrees of comparison do we have? We have 3 degrees. The first one is a positive degree. The second one is comparative degree. And the third one is superlative degree. Now, as you can see onto this slide, we are talking about the positive degree. Now, positive degree of comparison is used when we do not make any comparison. There is no comparison made. We are just talking about the quality of that particular noun, right? The first example, for example, says, the house is big. Now, I'm not making any comparison between two different houses and saying the first one is bigger or the second one is smaller. I'm simply saying that the house is big without any comparison being made. Similarly, the second example says this bag is small. The third example says the mango I ate was sweet, right? So when we are not making any comparison, we are using the positive degree of comparison, right? I hope you have understood this. Let's recall it. The positive degree is used when we describe only one person or thing, okay? As we have done earlier, there is no comparison that we are making here, right? Only describing a particular person or thing. Example here says, that apple is big. Now I'm only having one single apple here and I'm describing that apple, saying that that apple is big. But think of a situation if we have 2 or 3 apples, right? And I have to make comparison between 2 or 3 apples. What happens then? As you can see here in the next slide, you can see 3 different apples of 3 different sizes. The first one I say is big, but when I look at the second one, I say that the second apple is bigger than the first one. Now, if I look at the third apple, I say that the third one is the biggest of all the three apples, right? So when I'm making comparison between the first and the second one, I'm saying that the second one is bigger. Now, if you can see the cursor moving, the second one is bigger than the first one. But the third one is the biggest out of all the three apples. So this is where degrees of comparison is used when we are making the comparison between the different sizes of basically the adjectives, right? Now the next one is comparative degree of comparison. It is used when we compare two people or things, right? If you remember, in the positive degree, we did not make any comparison at all. In the comparative degree, we are making the comparison between two people or things, right? If we see the example, this box is smaller than the one kept on the table, right? Now, this sentence tells us there are two different boxes. And if I talk about this box, which is nearer to me, it is smaller than the one kept on the table. So one is near to me, another one is kept on the table. But the box that is near to me is smaller than the one kept on the table, right? Now, if you carefully see this, I have put the word than in bold, right? So whenever you use comparative degree, you will always find this word in the sentence. This is because we are making the comparison between two things or two people, right? Also, I have placed the word smaller in red color, right? This is why, because it is the comparative degree, right? Let's move on to the next one. Now you can see the visualization or a picture explaining the same comparative degree of comparison. The yellow pencil is longer than the red pencil. Now you can see two different pencils in the picture. One is yellow colored and the other one is red colored, right? So if I talk about the length of these two pencils, the yellow one is longer than the red pencil. Again, you must have seen the word than is there in the sentence, right? And longer suggests the comparative degree of comparison. Is it clear? Let's move on to the next one. Now, the third degree of comparison is superlative degree of comparison. It is used when we compare more than two people or things. Now, if we recall the first two, right? The first one was positive degree of comparison, wherein we did not make any comparison at all. We just described a particular thing or a person. The second one was comparative degree of comparison, wherein there were two things compared, right? For example, two houses. compared, right? This house is bigger than my friend's house, right? Now, the third one is superlative degree of comparison, wherein the comparison is not between two people or things, but comparison is between more than two persons or things, right? So you have more than two, maybe three, maybe five, maybe 10, maybe 50, right? So out of all the things that are present, this one is the of the superlative degree, right? The example is the biggest house in this lane is for sale. Now I'm talking about all the houses in this lane. I'm not talking about any one house. I'm not talking about any two houses. I'm talking about out of all the houses, the biggest house is for sale, right? So there are again two words that have been highlighted. The word biggest is highlighted. Biggest refers to the superlative degree, and the word the before the word biggest is highlighted, right? So whenever you use superlative degree of comparison, you will see the word the before that. Okay. The second example says Spider-Man was the fastest of all the superheroes. Now, I'm talking about all the superheroes, and I have to see who is that one who's the fastest, right? Comparison is made between more than two people, right? You're not talking about any two superheroes. I'm talking about all the superheroes, and out of those, which one is the fastest? So the fastest word depicts the superlative degree, and the word the is used before the superlative degree of comparison, right? Now, if I ask you what will be the positive degree of comparison for the word big, right? That remains the same. The positive degree would be big, the comparative, bigger, superlative, biggest. Similarly, for fast, positive degree is fast, comparative degree is faster, and the superlative degree is fastest, right? Let's move on to the next one. Now, in the form of picture, just recalling what we have just done, if we talk about comparatives and superlatives, the first boy that you see is fat. The second one, I'm making the comparison now between the first and the second. So the first one is fat, second one is fatter. Fatter because I'm making comparison between the first boy and the second boy. The third one, it is written here fattest. So out of all the three, comparison made between more than two people. So out of all these three boys, the third one is the fattest, right? I hope you have understood this one. Now, if you see, if you pay attention to the spelling of fatter and fattest, T has been doubled. Now, the spelling of fatter is not Fater, right? And the spelling of fattest is not Fatest. That's wrong. So the spelling of fatter would have double T in it, and the spelling of fattest would have double T again, right? So Fatter, fatter, and Fattest is fattest. right? Okay, the next slide, this is how we would be learning the positive, comparative, and the superlative degree of various adjectives. Now you have to pay attention here because the spellings and the way it is changed in comparative and superlative degree is little different. Okay. Now, if we take a look at it, one thing is very clear that in comparative degree you find er at the end, and in superlative degree you find est at the end, right? So that is there for sure. Okay, that is the basics that you have to understand. But somehow it also changes the way the spelling has been there. Okay, so the first word, if we see, is sweet. Okay, the second comparative form of sweet is sweeter. The superlative form is sweetest, wherein we are adding er in the comparative degree and est in the superlative degree. This is the basic understanding that you must have for making the comparative and the superlative forms. Okay. The second one is young. The comparative, again, we added er. Superlative, we added est. Now, the third one is brave. Here in the word brave, we already have e at the end. Okay, so we cannot add er here since e is already there. So I would just add r. So it turns out to be braver. So I'm not adding double e here. Please pay attention to this one. Okay, the superlative, again, e was already there, so I added st. It turned out to be bravest. Okay. Similarly, we do it for wise. E was already there, so we added just r. Again, in the superlative form, we added just est. Okay. Now the next one is big. Now, while we are changing the comparative form, it is bigger, but I doubled the alphabet G here. So it is Biggger, and in biggest, again, there is double G. The alphabet has been doubled. Similarly, we have it for hot, hot, hotter, hottest. Now the last two, easy and happy. If you see these words, these are ending in Y. Now, when I make the comparative form of this, it turns out to be easier. But pay attention to the spelling here, please. The spelling is not Easyer. That's wrong. So I would change Y to I, and the spelling becomes Easier. Similarly, for superlative, the spelling is Easiest, right? So you have to pay attention to this one, wherein Y is changed into I, and then you add ER and EST. It is the same way that we do for happy, wherein the comparative form is happier and the superlative form is happiest. But the Y in the positive form is changed into IER in the comparative form and IEST in the superlative form. Okay, I hope this one is clear. Children, when you get the workbooks, when we come back to school and you get the workbooks, a table is given in your workbook with regard to same, wherein you have various other words, various other adjectives similar to this, right? You'll have to learn that. Okay, as of now you can focus on these ones, right? The next slide. Okay, the next slide talks about a few other words wherein the comparative and the superlative form does not have er and est added to them. Okay, there are words like beautiful. You cannot say the comparative form is beautifuler or the superlative form is beautifulest. That's wrong. Okay, so the comparative form would have the word more beautiful, and superlative would have most beautiful. Similarly, for the one courageous, more courageous, comparative form, and the superlative form is most courageous. Okay. Now, the word good, the comparative is better, and the superlative is best. You have to learn these, right? That would become easier for you once you learn this table. Okay, and then you see if the comparison is made between two, you use comparative degree of comparison. If the comparison is made between more than two persons or things, then you use superlative degree. Okay, okay, the next one is bad. Comparative is worse, and the superlative is worst, right? Now, if I see the next one in the form of an example, there is little water in the jug. There is lesser water in than that one. Are you understanding this one? I said that there is less or lesser water in this pot than that one. I'm talking about two different pots having water, and I'm measuring the quantity of water in the first pot and the quantity of water in the second one. Making the comparison, that is why I'm using the word less or lesser. Okay, or I can say using the superlative form, there is least water in this jug. I'm talking about all the jugs present there or all the pots present there, and the least water is present in this one, right? The next one is much or many. Comparative form is more, and the superlative form is most. Okay. Similarly, we have later. The comparative, sorry, it would not be later. Here, the positive form would have late, not later. Okay. The positive form would have late. The comparative would have later or latter, and the superlative would have latest, right? Okay, there's a difference in the meaning in the comparative form, later and latter. Later is when I'm postponing certain things, and I'm saying that, for example, I'll do this work later, or you can meet me later in the evening. But the second word that you see here, which is Latter, that is pronounced as latter. Latter refers to, for example, think of a situation wherein two things are there or two dresses are there, right? I'm referring to the latter one. Latter refers to the second one, right? My mother brought me two different dresses. The first one was red in color. The second one was black in color, for example. Okay, listen carefully, please. I'll repeat myself. My mother brought me two dresses. The first one was red in color, and the second one was black in color. I chose to take the latter one. So, which one do I take? I take the latter, the second. Second one was black. So I chose the black colored dress. Okay. Similarly, we have far, farther, or further. Superlative would have farthest or furthest. Far, farther, farthest refers to the distance. Further, when I'm referring to, like again, postponing it to a certain thing. Okay. Similarly, in, inner, innermost, or inmost, up, upper, uppermost, or upmost. Right? You can learn these as well. That would be helpful. Okay, this is where we end it. Okay, so this was the explanation of degrees of comparison. You may practice different sentences looking if or watching for the part wherein this comparison is made, or if it is made between two things or more than two things. Thank you so much, class. All the best.